And we left off yesterday. Did I fix this? I think my when I run this, I want to just run and do a test real quick and drag it over onto the screen. Does my player go to the right spot? I'm looking just to see if the outline box is around the player. Yeah, I fixed the box around the player. It's just misaligned on there. So we have a snail here. The player is actually behind the snail. But we'll go through and we'll program now the code that determines what happens if the player runs into the snail. And we're going to do Super Mario Brothers rules so that if you land on top of an enemy, it's destroyed. And if you if you touch the enemy on the side, then you take a hit.
Can we take the shells as a power-up?
You could erase the snail part and take the shell as like a power-up, and you could like throw shells. Or you could throw coconuts, or you could throw like bumblebee wings or something like that.
The coconuts are too beautiful.
So, the logic that we have to add on here is basically if the player comes into the snail from the side, it's going to get hurt. So to make the player like show that it's hurt, we could add like a hurt animation, which they have. I'm going to cheat and use construct and go to behaviors. And on the actual player, I'm going to add the flash animation. It's just this lightning icon. And so now we can activate a flash for the player. And it's going to be on collision with an enemy. We want something to happen. So the code that we're building now here is we're going to add an event for the player box. And it's going to be on collision with another object. For right now, that object's going to be the snail enemy or enemy snail. But we don't want it to just be as soon as we collide with it. We want to make a new blank sub-event. So I press B on the keyboard to make this new blank one. That way I know it's a sub-event 14 is a sub-event of 13. And I'm going to have two conditions inside here. The first condition is going to be that we want to check and see if the player box is falling. So that's a condition for the platformer. And then the next thing that we're going to check in here, I'm going to right-click and choose Add Another Condition. The next thing I want to check in here is I want to compare player box, compare Y, and I want to see if it's less than, not equal to, if it's less than the enemy snail.y. So these are the two conditions under which we're going to destroy the enemy. So this would be snail destroy. And then we'll give like a little jump to the player by we'll do set vector y, and we'll momentarily give it minus 700. You can tweak those numbers afterwards. It's just going to create a little hop effect that when you hop on the actual enemy, if you're falling and you're above the enemy, so remember y0 starts up in the top corner up here. So if your y is less than the snail y, that means that you have met the conditions to destroy the enemy, and we'll have you bounce up a little bit. So we're not done yet in here. We're going to go back up to number 13, and I'm going to press B to make another blank sub-event. And this blank sub-event on line 15 for me now, I'm going to go to System, and I'm going to go to Else. So if these two conditions aren't met, we're going to ask the player to flash on and off, and I'll just leave default there, on time, off time, 0.1, duration 1 second. Okay. So now we're not done. We know we'd have to do hit points eventually, but let's take a look and see how that works out. So on here, when I run this, I got to drag my screen over. We can check and see. All right, so now if I walk into it sideways, I start flashing. If I jump on top, there's the animation. You can see it going away. All right, so now we've coded how the player interacts with the snail, but now we need the snail to interact with the environment. And so there's a lot of methods we could use to do this. But what we're going to do is we're going to give the snail player controls, and we're going to disable the default player controls. And we're going to have the snail basically walk until it hits a marker and then have it turn around the other way. So Brendan, I think this is what you were describing, is he just keeps on walking?
Yeah, but I was able to fix it.
Okay, cool. So I'm at that spot now.
Okay.
So what we're going to do to make the enemy move, we're going to go back to the enemy snail, behaviors, and we're going to add the platform behavior. However, the first thing that we're going to do is default controls. We're going to say no, because we don't want the snail being moved when the game player presses the arrow keys. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a new sprite. Again, I'm going to make it size 40 by 40 and a light color. So on here we'll go just something light with low alpha, just so that we can see it against the background here. So instead of being called sprite, this is going to be called edge marker. And I'm going to build this here and then hold control and put another one over here. We'll deal with the visibility afterwards. It's probably better to leave it as on start of layout, turn all these things that need to be invisible. I made it 40 by 40. So now what we can do is we can adjust some of the platform behaviors for the snail. The snail should be pretty slow. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust its max speed on platform to 50 and its acceleration and deceleration to 100. So it's going to be pretty slow as it moves around. We've got these edge markers here. We'll turn them invisible afterwards. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to add an instance variable to the enemy. And I think they call it a text one, and they call it action. It doesn't matter what name you give it. I'm going to give it initial value of right, because he's facing the right to start. So here's our enemy. Our enemy has action, and it's a text type, and the value is right, all one word, lowercase. So what we can do from there, we have the variable, and we're going to write some logic that says if the action is right, we should simulate movement by holding the right arrow key for the snail. If action is left, we should simulate the left arrow key for the snail. Also, if we hit the edge marker and we are right, we're going to change our action to left. And if we hit the edge marker and we're left, we're going to change the action back to right. So that way the snail is kind of bound on these 3 tiles or whatever zone we decide to give for the enemy. So the code that we're going to do is over here. We're going to add an event to the snail, and it's going to be compare variable or compare instance variable. And we're saying if action is equal to right, and I'm putting the value in quotes, then what we're going to do is for the enemy, we're going to simulate platform control. Simulate control. And he's going to be simulating going to the right. Now, we'll also go in and say mirrored to not mirrored, because he's already facing right. The other action we're going to add, we'll copy and paste this. I'll change this one from right to left. And then the simulated control becomes left, and then the not mirrored becomes mirrored. And if we leave this here, he's just going to keep running off the edge. So we have to add another event for the snail that is on collision with another object, and that's going to be the edge marker. So when we hit edge marker, this is where we're going to have another blank sub-event, and I'm actually going to have two blank sub-events. So the first one is if snail compare instance variable action is equal to right, then we're going to snail set value of the variable to left. Okay? So that way if we hit the edge marker and the action is right, reverse it. Set the enemy snail action to left. This one here is going to be another else statement. So that's in system else. And else we're going to copy this action up here.
How do you get the action?
I made an instance variable called action. So on here, right click on the enemy, instance variables, I made one, it's text, and its value is right. So you're back here trying to check this left and right action. That's what we want to find. So now, else, we have to set it back to right. And let's see, mirrored, not mirrored. I'm going to do a little preview and see how my snail is moving. So let's see if my snail slowly slides back and forth. And as soon as it hits the piece, it's moving the other way, still going slow. And I've hit an issue with my level design here. My snail can't go any further because it's stuck. So on my first platform, it's too close. And it's kind of stuck. So I'm going to move everything up a little bit. And let's run it again and see if the snail enemy does his little travel the way that he's supposed to. So he hits one side and he'll turn around and go the other way. It's like watching paint dry because he's going so slow. Yep. All right. So now.
Can you go back to your event sheet real quick?
Yep, I can go back to the event sheet. So here's my event sheet, and the only thing that we've done is 13 through 20 for the snail.
Maybe it's doing that specific thing.
Cool?
No.
No.
Not yet.
Oh, there's no action.
Could I do
Where's
something?
else burning?
Else is in system.
Can't compare HP.
All right.
Oh, I can check.
I think there's 2 more tricks in this game for instructions. But then it's going to be play with the assets that you have and figure out what you want to do with them. So the last thing that I'm going to show, or last 2 things I'm going to show, is jumping through certain tiles. So if you need this, go bring up the YouTube live stream and then pause back to that screen because I want to keep going. So I want to show a cool thing we can do with the tiled background. So I'm going to bring 2 more tiles out. I'm going to turn snap to grid back on. And I know these frames because they're in the instructions, 134 and 135. Are those the 2 that we want? Did I do 135 and 134? 134, 135. I might have the numbers off, so I might have to go look and see. Oh, my numbers are off because I deleted the empty frames. So for me, the frames that I'm looking for are 128 and 129. So on this one, I'll change this one to 128. And on this one, I'll change this one to 129. Sure, quickly. Okay, so now I've made a piece, and I want to be able to jump here and jump onto that. But there's going to be an issue. Right now, it has the same solid behavior as the rest of the tile set. So I'm going to get here. I have to jump on this enemy. But now notice I can't go through here because I'm hitting the hitbox of this. So we need to make a second version of the tiles. And to do that, we're going to go right click on tile. And we'll do clone. And it'll make a thing called tile 2. I don't like the name tile 2. I'm going to call it tile jump through. And I'm going to delete these two up here that I made. And I'm going to grab from tile jump through. And I'm going to put two of them back out on the stage. This one's going to be 128. Hold click. This one's going to be 129. So I can make my piece. But now these aren't going to be solid anymore. Okay? So I've got both of these selected. And on jump through tile, I'm going to change the behavior so that it's no longer solid, but I'm going to add jump through, which means it has platform properties. Where's jump through? I'm going blind. Jump through. It's the first one that's selected. I'm looking everywhere but the first one. So now I should be able to load this back up again. Those ones that are jump through, I won't have an issue going through them. So now I'm not hitting that. I'm hitting here, and then I can actually jump up on top of this. So it can give you a little variety in some of your platform area where some of the things are here and are working.
Wait, do you have to take solid off?
Okay? Yes, you have to take solid off for jump through to work.
Okay, thank you.
Because otherwise you're going to hit the box as soon as you hit it. Because remember, the box for this is down here. So you'll only get part of the way through there.
Yay!
Alright, so there's jump through. And the last behavior that they show us is this effect called parallax. So parallax is a really cool animation effect. Basically, it was made popular by like the Super Nintendo. And what it means is the background is going to move at a slightly offset speed. So we're going to add that to the background sprite. In the properties bar, we're going to go and adjust it. So we're going to find background sprite. It's on the layer background. And I forget where parallax is off the start. Is it in size and position? No. It's not a behavior.
Oh, I don't think it's on.
Is it in the back?
Oh, Mr. Lucas.
Where is it?
I found it, but I didn't click on the background sprite. I just clicked on the background layer.
On the background layer. So it's for the background layer. Thank you. So on the background layer, not the background sprite, here's this parallax they have as 100, 100. And they suggest 50, 50. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit and grab everything and just slide it down a little bit to make the parallax effect a little bit more obvious as the game plays now. Because now we'll see more of the background trees and stuff rather than just the purple sky, which is nice, but now you can kind of see the background is scrolling at a slightly different rate as the player. And so it adds like a level of graphics to the game not seen yet in our simple designs. I went onto this background layer, and I went over to parallax, and I adjusted it to 50, 50, which is effectively cutting the X and Y in half.
Do I have to unlock it?
No, you don't have to unlock it and change it, but you have to not be clicking on the actual background image. It's not a property of the background image, it's a property of the background layer.
Yeah, it's going much slower than the files.
So over here, you click on backgrounds,
50 by 50.
50 by 50. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think
So let me check this out.
that adds the parallax effect. So I think this is the end of it, but basically we've gone through, we've built levels from tiles, we've learned about mirroring, we've learned about animations and loops, enemies controlling them with platform behavior, detect if your player is falling rather than running into the side of an enemy, instance variables, edge markers to make an enemy go back and forth, jump through platforms. Oh, I don't know if we did jump through. So if it's a jump through platform, we want to be able to pass down through that platform. So I don't know if we can pass down through this platform yet, because I didn't do anything for the down arrow key. So default platform controls don't have it, but what we'll do is to keep everything kind of the same. Actually, I'll do it down here and I'll move it back up afterwards. This is going to keyboard on key pressed, and I'm going to do the down arrow key. And I'm going to add an action after my autosave finishes. I'm going to add an action to the player box, and it's going to be from platform, and it's going to be simulate control. Not that. It should be like a pass through. Fall through. Fall through is what we're looking to add. So now, on some of the controls, let me run this again. I shouldn't be able to fall through the solid pieces. But on here, I can now fall through that jump through platform.
How do I make it solid?
I want to make the.
How do you make what solid? The jump through platform, get rid of the solid behavior and add jump through to it.
Oh, okay.
So now I can pass through there. Okay, so that's something that we added. And then I want to keep all the player controls together, so I'm going to put this back up with the other arrow keys for the mirrored and not mirrored. So they're kind of up there. I think that takes us to the end of this, but there's a lot more that you can do, because remember, in the actual Jungle Platform files, we still have animations for the player to attack.
Oh, yeah.
We have animations for the player to teeter forwards and backwards, like if you reach the edge of a platform. And then we have animation for an enemy being hurt, or a player being hurt. And we have pickups that are on here. The pickups are actually pretty cool. I'm going to go over these. The sprite strips you see here, basically, as these get sliced up, this one's going to be tougher to work with. I think I'm going to do the pickup sprite strip one just as an example to close out the video, because you have to slice it up in a very specific way to get the items to rotate the way that you want them to. So on here they have all these different sprite strips here. I'll do pickup sprite strip number 1 and show you what I want to do for pickups. So if I go back to the layout, I'm going to insert, I don't want to be on the background layer, back on the main layer, I'm going to insert a new sprite onto the main layer, import frames from sprite strip, and I'm going to go back to pickups, and I'm going to get pickup set number 1. Okay, now here, the pickup set number 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 horizontal cells and 15 vertical cells?
16.
Oh, yep, 0,
Yeah,
16.
I've spliced it up.
16. I was counting to the last one. The last one said 15, but I forgot it started with that. So when I hit OK on this one, it should slice up pretty nicely. And I can get rid of now 0, which has nothing in it. But if I animate a pickup like this, it's not going to look great. I've got to delete every 15th frame. So I'm just going to start pressing delete, 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 delete. There's my second purple gem. Delete, 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 delete. There's my third gem.
I just wanted to.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I think that's just kind of repeating again in the sprite strip. So maybe they're just doubling the animation. But I've already gone all the way around. I think 9 is the same as 1 right now. So from this point here, I'm just going to delete everything else. But I'm going to go slow, because once I start deleting that last one, I'm going to get rid of 9 and 8, because there's only really 7 animation frames to this. So now this here, I would go to default animation, and I could do something like set speed to 7, 8 frames. So I could do 8 frames per second. And this could be loop, yes. And when this is out on the screen, instead of being sprite, I could change this to like purple gem. And when we run it,
Donkey Kong coin.
we can see there's our purple gem rotating around once per second. I haven't picked it up yet, but we've got it. And then we could be smart with this, and rather than slicing up and deleting a bunch of different frames, if we know the pattern of gems, we could just set frame to be like frame plus 8 or frame plus 9, and then once it gets to the end, we'll repeat it. So let's try this again, and I'm going to do another sprite,
This is so tiring.
same image, import from sprite strip, pick up, and then, oh, I actually didn't specify. Import from sprite strip. What did we say, 8 by 16?
Yeah.
I did 1 by 1. That was bad. 8 by 16, and replace the existing one. There's my warning. And it should slice up. So now here, I know that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So plus 8 is the next frame. So what I can do for this one, let's see if there's a way we can advance to the next frame. So we'll call this one sprite pickup, and I'm going to set loop to yes, and I'm going to leave it at the 8 frames per second. Okay? So on here now, take a look at these 2 different gems. This one's going to be acting much weirder than the first one, but we're going to fix that in a second. And it's going to take much less deleting. Take a look at that one that's like hypering through all of them. We can simulate this same exact thing by not animating this one at all. Here's what we're going to do for that. Okay, what's up?
Wait, so how do I make it so that it's not put, or how do I import it into
It
construct
works.
animation?
It was on the sprite,
It works now. The only thing
right
is that
click,
what I wanna
import
do
from
is
sprite
finish
strip.
and then it says finish the level.
When I do it, it always imports one in.
Because you're not setting it to be 8 horizontal cells by 16 vertical cells. Okay? So, on this one here, I'm going to go to the pickup one. I'm going to set its speed to 0. I'm going to set loop to no. And I'm going to add an instance variable to pickup called frame number. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to let it start on frame 0. On the event sheet, I'm gonna add event to system. 8 frames, what's that over 8? 12.5. So every X seconds, and it's gonna be 0.125. So every eighth of a second, I'm going to add an action to the pickup to add value to its frame number, and I'm going to add 8 to it. Now, this will animate up to a certain point. You guys want to see? And then it's just going to stay on the last one, because frame number is going to keep on going up and up and up and up and up. We've got to put a limit on it. We've got to set it back to 0 whenever it's supposed to be back to 0.
Wait, is frame number an instant variable?
I made frame number to be an instance variable, yes. So this last part on here is I need to see how many actual frames are in here, not for this pickup, but for this pickup. For this one here, there are 127. So if the frame number is greater than 127, we have to set it back to what it needs to be. And I'm going to give it another instance variable. And I'm going to call this original frame. Because that way I can go and set the original frame and go back to 0. And if I wanted to do the next coin, it's the next coin. But watch and see what I do with the pickup here. So on here, we can add a sub-event here that basically says pickup, compare instance variable, and if frame number is greater than 127, we want to add an action to the pickup, set value of the frame number, and we'll go back to pickup dot original frame. So now, as I go and run this here, if I did it right, oh, where's my pickup is out of view. If I did this right, and I run it again,
I built a tree. I spent so much time building this tree.
every X seconds, it should be, oh, you know what, I just set it to 8 instead of adding 8. Did I set it to 8? Add 8 to frame number. Oh, I added 8 to frame number, and then I didn't ask it to set frame to pickup
How should I kill the coconut?
dot frame number. So I didn't ask it to go to the frame number. So now it's adding 8 to the frame number, and it should be going there. Let's see if we did it right. Yeah, so now there it is. It's still animating. Ooh, and I've got one that's off. One shows the last coin, and it shows the last coin because it's getting it to 127. So we've got to fix that check and say not 127, but if it's greater than 120.
Wait, what is the point?
The point you'll see in a second. So here's the big payout. So rather than building 16 different pieces, I still got to 120. So 120 has got to be 119. I got to get to the last frame that we don't want it to be. I don't want to see the coin in here, but you'll see I'm going to change the value of this one. So I won't see the coin anymore. It's still spinning and updating, but now I can go into this pickup and say, oh, I want this one to be frame 1, and I want the instance variable of this one. So where's our instance variable? You'll see in a second. Frame 1. Because now, without having to do any more work, I now have the red gem
I
working.
just want to see if the end.
Yep, hold on. I now have the red gem working.
Just set the player's default HP time.
I can set this right
So now
here
my HP's 100. I don't care.
to initial frame,
Just go down.
I don't know,
The
8,
only thing I need to do is
and
not
initial
fall off.
frame value here. I don't want 8, I want
I just want to see if it restarts. the
7
layout.
is going to be the coin. 7 is going to be the original frame.
That's the ending. It normally would go the next
Now as we run
left.
this here,
'Cause she
She's
didn't
on a
tell-
field trip.
She didn't tell us she was gonna be.
You can see now I have an animated coin. I gotta figure out why it's still doing the first 8 frames there. But I didn't have to slice all those up. I just used logic to say, all right, instead of showing the first, the 0th, the 8th, the 16th frame, I want to show the 1st, the 9th, the 17th frame. And so I can make all the power-ups just by logic. Although, why is it purple first? That's bothering me. We'll figure it out later. But I'm going to stop the stream here. And say that your task now is to add in the other 2 enemies, add in pickups, add in hit points, design a level, and keep track of the score with tools that you know how.